This conference will now be recorded.
All right, great. Then I would like to call the meeting to order. We'll do the introductions first, as it states on the agenda. My name is Charles Dice. I live in Cove Beach. I'm the chairman of the Southwest Coastal Citizens Advisory Committee.
My name's Theodore Lundy, and I'm a member of the committee.
I'm Linda Eierman. I live in Arch Cape, and I am a member of the Citizens Advisory Committee.
My name's Chris Anderson. I live in Arch Cape, and I am a member of the committee as well.
All right, thanks, everybody. Ian?
We'll do it. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure for the record, we have about 10 to 12 members of the public here, and then we also have county staff. I'm Ian Sisson, senior planner. We have Julia Decker, planning manager. We have Jason Pollock and David Cook, both planners. David Cook is new as of last week, so welcome, David. And Gail Henriksen, Community Development Director. I just wanted to check with Gail. Did you have any additional comments you wanted to make before we get started?
Yeah, I did, Ian. Thank you. And I know this is your last meeting, so I'm not going to take up much of your time because I know that you have a lot of topics to cover. But first of all, I did want to thank you all for the many years that you have put into this project. I know that there have been a lot of plot twists along the way, and that, you know, not everyone may be happy with everything that's happened, but I did want to acknowledge and let you know that we do appreciate the time and effort that you've put into the work that you've done here. I also just wanted to thank Ian. He has literally put in hundreds of hours to ensure that you get your agendas, that you have the information and the tools that you need to come up with a plan that can be supported. And I did just want to say that I went through the last draft, and I do want to just let you know in advance before you start your discussions today that there are some things in there that, as currently presented, staff cannot recommend approval of. There are some concerns about policies that would lead to taking issues on behalf of the county and create a liability, or things that might deny people their right to due process, things like eliminating the variance option for people to give them some relief, which they do have a right to have if they meet the criteria. And then with regard to the short-term rental, I think we might be a little bit premature as we're still working through this process, and we do have another town hall meeting scheduled for January 22nd. At 10 a.m. And the board tonight is also going to be considering an extension of the moratorium. So it might be premature at this point to have all those policies loaded into the community plan. I think that as we work through the short-term rental process and complete that, then we go back and amend the community plan to include whatever policies would be appropriate. But I just wanted to let you know that up front, that we do have concerns and would probably recommend denial of some of the items that are currently included. But I just didn't want there to be any surprises if that did happen going forward. So I just wanted everyone to know. And again, just thank you for all your service, and I will let you have to it.
Can I ask a question? Gail, we didn't intend to eliminate variances on many things. When it was specifically said in there, subject to a variance, we just kind of figured the variance section would take over. So I wanted to get, if you can, kind of a list of the things that it appears we're eliminating variances for, so at least we know what it seems like we're doing.
Yeah, I don't have a list in front of me, Linda. I just know that when I went through there, I saw at least one or two instances where that had come up, where that language had been proposed for deletion. And so that attracted my attention. And of course, any draft that you put forward is going to go to county council for review as well. So anything that we can't recommend approval of, or that may be premature, we would recommend denial of. So, but you'll see that as you go through your work today, where you've made those recommendations for deletion.
Yeah, I like the height ordinance. We did not intend for that to take away the variance. We just didn't think it needed to be called out specifically. So I guess we can make that clear as we go through.
That was my understanding too, Linda. I didn't, based on the discussion during the meeting for that particular item, I think it was the height variance. I didn't believe that you wanted to eliminate the opportunity to do a variance. It was just to strike that language from that particular policy, but not to eliminate the opportunity. Yeah. So yeah, there may be some issues. I know based on some of the comments we received in writing ahead of the meeting, there may just be some issues that the committee might want to clarify what their intent is with some of the changes you're proposing to make, just so that staff can make sure that we have it written correctly and to eliminate any confusion it might cause from folks who haven't been part of these discussions to date.
Agreed.
I see Commissioner Thompson. Welcome to the meeting. Did you want to make any remarks before we get started, Commissioner Thompson?
You know what? I'm better off listening and trying to learn. So thanks. If I have comments, I'll be happy to add them, but I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you for the courtesy.
All right. Thanks for being here.
All right, with that, then Ian, I would ask you to take us through the public comment period, and I would hope that we could limit everything to 3 minutes of public comment, as has been our practice.
Yes, definitely. So we received a number of public comments ahead of the meeting. And I've put a link in the chat. I'll paste it again just in case for late arrivals that didn't show up for some reason. So all of the written comments we received are going to be available for your reading at that link. And then we're going to reserve the time today during the meeting for those who have showed up to provide testimony live. And so I'm just going to go down the list, and if you'd like to speak, please go ahead and take yourself off mute, and I will have a timer up on the screen, so please be aware of that. We will have a 3-minute time limit just to make sure that we have enough time to get through everyone who wants to speak and all of the material the committee needs to go over today. So first on the list, I have Amber Geiger Morgan. Go ahead and take yourself off mute if you'd like to provide comments. Okay, and I know Amber provided written comments, and again, those are available on the link that I posted. Next, we have Colleen Kane. Okay, not hearing anything from Colleen. Next, we have Jeff. Just Jeff. Not hearing anything from Jeff. John Meyer.
I'm sorry, yes, Ian, I pushed the wrong button. This is Jeff Stewart.
Oh, is that, okay, sorry, John, we'll go ahead and go back to Jeff, and then we'll get back to you, John. Go ahead, Jeff.
I have prepared comments that I've written that I think will probably be the most helpful. So I won't go all through those. I did want to say I appreciate these processes. My only regret is that I don't feel like there has been a broad community input into the process to date. I'm hoping with a little more time here, and as people become more acquainted with this process, that they'll be able to weigh in. And I had a chance to talk to Ian last week. He was very helpful in kind of going over the process with me. But it seemed like going ahead, if there's a way to establish some greater outreach to the community. And since so many people in this area live outside the community and have second homes in this area, that is just based on my experience working on with CACs and being a part of CACs elsewhere. I know that it's always a challenge for the county to kind of track down all that information, but this came as a complete surprise to me this past week that this process was underway and that we're really to the end of it. And Ian was quite helpful in at least letting me know that letters and staff contact will be ongoing through this process. I just hope we'll have a way of reaching out and getting a greater participation. And I'll leave it at that and look forward to hearing what we go through today. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. John Meyer.
Thank you, Ian. I'm writing and appearing here on behalf of my wife and myself, who own a home in Cove Beach. Our primary concern when we heard about this document and had an opportunity to review it, our primary concern relates to the policies that are included in this document and recommendations regarding short-term rentals. And we certainly agree with the comments from Gail that this is being studied extensively and very actively by a lot of people in a public forum that has broad community participation. And we don't understand, when we saw these policies first submitted by Linda Eierman on November the 10th at 8 in the morning, about an hour before that meeting took place, and we didn't have time to review them or comment on them then. We're sorry, we wished we had been able to comment earlier. They're very troubling in the sense of where is the public support, where's the public input, and where is the give and take and the pros and cons. There's so many aspects to the short-term rental issue in our community that it for sure needs a public forum and an open public forum that has community support. So that's our primary concern, and we recommended, certainly that these elements related to short-term rentals should not be included, and certainly not at this time. We're also concerned about the insertion of the housing policy and the implied nexus between short-term rentals and the lack of affordable housing in Clatsop County. We don't see any likelihood that by eliminating or severely restricting short-term rentals in Cove Beach, Falcon Cove, or Arch Cape, that there's going to be any impact on low-income or affordable housing. That would require a huge subsidy on the part of the county, and those areas are not appropriate for working and communicating, getting back and forth, to work and public schools and other elements. So it's just an inappropriate comparison. I don't think it's appropriate. It should be eliminated. And finally, we object to the recommendation that this committee, if we understand this correctly, become a permanent standing committee. We're concerned that this committee reflects biases. And thank you.
Thank you, John.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Next, we have Rob Chambers. Go ahead, Rob.
Thank you.
Your audio is quite garbled there, Rob.
Once you admit Patel, I'll fix that, and I'll go next.
We'll maybe try coming back to you, Rob. The audio is quite garbled and staticky there. Let's move on to Scott Harn next. Scott?
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thanks for the opportunity to speak. I'm a homeowner in Cove Beach. My comments are going to parallel some of the comments that have been made earlier by Jeff and Mr. Meyer, but I'll be saying it a little bit differently. I recognize that this is late in the process, but since the process is still going, I think this commentary needs to count. It needs to be part of the record. And what I'm here to say is, again, this process is supposed to reflect input from the broad community, but I can tell you unequivocally that the current draft does not. There is a large engaged cohort in the community whose voice is somehow magically not represented. And I think Ms. Ironman, maybe if you could mute your mic, there's some background noise from paper shuffling. My two main areas of concern are with proposed restrictions on or elimination of short-term rentals, and also housing policy recommendation number 1 regarding tree removal and denial of development applications. The tree removal language is really vague, it's overly broad and too restrictive on property rights. If lots have been platted by the county, then I think the philosophy should be that these lots are expected to be developed. Everything that's been developed in this planning area up to today over the years has required tree removal. So including the very conspicuous case that was presented by Mr. Paparoni in last month's meeting, why should we now introduce a new hurdle to development? Restricting use of these assets is just suppressing the economic opportunity for owners, and at a greater level, the economic growth of the entire county, and all just to benefit those who already have their houses. On the matter of short-term rentals, there's an entire narrative in the document, both in the history of the area section and in the community concerns section, that I propose should not go into the record. It's biased. It consists mainly of unsubstantiated assertions, not supported by any hard evidence. And because it doesn't represent the entire community, it is just one particular view. In fact, the largest cohort in the community is this vacation home cohort, which also includes those units that operate as short-term rentals. And so unless the community plan was developed with the involvement and contains the views of this group, it can't be labeled as community concerns. It's incomplete. Short-term rentals are portrayed as inherently bad, but they're simply not. The county maintains records, and if you do your due diligence, you'll find that there are basically 0 confirmed violations in the past 2 years. Mild nuisances are a possibility, but they're in no way different than those nuisances that occur where housing is occupied on a year-round basis. There's language in the plan about preserving the character of the community, and I'm totally aligned with that objective. But we can't ignore the reality, which is that the character of the community does now and always has included vacation homes and short-term rentals. It has for decades. I disagree with the assertion that rental activity today is different than it ever was. It's just more efficient for those involved. If you look at what we're doing right now, we're meeting virtually using communication software over the internet that didn't exist in the past. You know, you're in your house, I'm in mine. But what didn't exist, say in the year 2000, were vacation rentals in Arch Cape. They were advertised in classified ads or with local property managers. They've always been there. So thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Okay, I'm going to reset the 3-minute clock here, and we have Cheryl Magnuson Boyle next. Cheryl, go ahead.
Yes, short-term rentals are a very big concern, but my concern is a little more broad. It is the big, long section of this document that justifies keeping the Community Advisory Committee, which is, as my understanding is a short-term committee to advise on the planning for our area. And we don't need to have a committee that is putting the brakes on development and growth in our area, because we have our elected officials that are already in place, and we have very good rules and regulations already in place that help preserve and maintain and keep us on track in our growth. Having recently built our home in Cove Beach, I can attest to very sensitive and thorough rules and regulations to keep the area well maintained in an environmental position, and the permitting really accounted for many of the concerns that were put forth by this committee. It's not easy to get a permit to build a home in our area. All of these issues are looked into and made to, the homeowner is made to account for most of these concerns in a very reasonable way and in a very objective way, not in the subjective way that's brought about by this advisory committee, which brings into question the quote beauty of the area. Who is to account and judge the beauty? These are too subjective. So I really strongly object to maintaining an advisory committee that is very subjective and really seems to be set to put the brakes on any process that might lead to further development and further growth in our area. Growth and development bring financial stimulus and bring life to a community. So we don't want our community to stagnate. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. Okay, we have a person who's called in on the phone, just labeled here as caller 2. If you're on the phone, feel free to go ahead if you'd like to provide comments. Okay, not hearing anything there. Let's go back to Amber Geiger. I know Amber let me know with a message she wanted to speak. Go ahead, Amber.
Thank you, Ian. I appreciate it. And hello, everyone. It's good to see your faces. Hello, Commissioner Thompson. First of all, I just want to thank everyone for proposing policies in the Southwest Coastal Community Plan that protect the environment and conserve the land and trees and animals that we all love here. We are grateful for your work towards this, and it means a lot to keep what we love, the beauty of what we love, the wildness. But I do want to bring your attention to an issue of access for Oregonians that will be impacted by the proposed policies in this plan. I'm deeply concerned that the proposed short-term policies may create a policy of exclusion, prioritizing those who can afford to own property along the Oregon coast and limiting access to the greater Oregon community. Due to the small quantity of hotels in the Southwest coastal area, limiting or prohibiting short-term rentals in this area would limit access for the majority of Oregonians to the natural wonders of the Southwest coastal region. And I like to point out that the visionary Governor Oswald West, he did not want just 5% of Oregon's population to have the exclusive use of its beaches. He wanted to keep Oregon's beaches accessible to all, not just the privileged few of us. And I also think that the policies for short-term restrictions are in direct competition with the goals of the Oregon State Parks and Recreation for inclusion, as it's stated on their website. So we object to the short-term rental policies, at least 1, 2, and 3 of the plan, and believe that there's no reason why short-term rentals cannot coexist with full-time residences, part-time residences, and the conservation of land and animals, and at the same time help allow the access that Oregonians so desperately need to their coastal natural areas. My hope is that we can continue coming together as a community, the full community, not just part of the community, open our hearts and see the responsibility of the privilege that we have as property owners of this beautiful land. And let's work together with the environment, keeping in mind both our smaller neighborhood community and access for our greater community of Oregons. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Amber. Let's go back to Rob Chambers. Rob?
Can you hear me okay now?
Yeah.
Sounds good, yes.
Okay, great. So I did submit written comments, so I won't go into the depth there, but I do want to do a few things here. First, I want to thank those on the committee for all of the long hours, the hard work, and dedication you have, and the passion that you have for protecting the area and trying to keep it a great place to live, a great place to recreate. I do want to call out a few things. First point I want to make is that the precision of language in the document, I would like to see worked on. There are a number of places where it reads more opinion than objective and clear with data behind it. Those points are listed in the written comments that I have. But some examples are around like the the use of the word the phrase over occupancy. That could mean the actual having more people than are allowed to have, or it could be the having more people than some other people in the community want to have in a short-term rental. Other things that are less clear there around statements like these are homes used almost exclusively for transient lodging, whereas I think the county data clearly shows otherwise in the aggregate here, where the number of days rented is far less than exclusive use. Additionally, the building aspects of preventing a few things for new development in terms of like the tree removal. I do think it's good to protect trees. I think outright prohibition of it is not a great idea. And there's some self-inconsistencies in the document where some places it talks about outright prohibition, whereas other places it talks about replacement or replenishment. I also want to try to draw on some of the points just made here around the access to the environment for people that can't afford to live on the coast. There are two parts to this. One part is in the activity of having people join our home and enjoy the coast. We've met many wonderful families that come here because they want to have a kitchen to cook in. They want to have an easy, more relaxed environment. Or things like Generation Z is much more interested in staying in short-term rentals as opposed to hotels due to the ability to stay with friends and enjoy the environment. That generation is a much more community-oriented generation than baby boomers or those before, or even Generation X. And to have policies in here that don't represent the full generational spectrum of the population of Oregon and surrounding areas, I think is short-sighted. But I do appreciate all the hard work that you've done. I would like the precision of language to be a lot more clear and backed up with evidence and facts when possible. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Let me double check my list. I think that was all. Yes, that appears to have been everyone. Thank you all to the public who provided your written comments, as well as to those who spoke up today. We really value your input in this process, so thank you. And Charles, I will turn it back over to you.
All right, thanks, Ian. So at this point, we will move into the work of the committee to finalize our update to the Southwest Coastal Community Plan. First, I'd like to just, say a few words since this is our last meeting, in all likelihood. And the first thing is to thank the members of the committee for their hard work. We have been at this for 2.5 years. We've had roughly 30 meetings during that 2.5 years. All of those meetings are available to the public on the website as recorded video meetings. So I'd encourage everybody to take, well, most of them are recorded. I can't remember exactly when we started, but most of them are recorded. And certainly if it's not video, it's in audio. And I think that the committee has just really done an excellent job of trying to balance all of the various constituents in our community and the needs of those constituents in our community over the last 30 months. I especially want to thank Linda Eierman, who has done yeoman's work for putting together a lot of the text that we have essentially reviewed and in many cases adopted as revisions to the document that was 40 years old. I also want to point out that our committee was an appointed committee by the Clatsop County Board of Commissioners. Our committee consists of, or originally consisted of 5 people. We've had one person that dropped out along the way because she moved. But 3 of the committee members have permanent homes in Cove Beach or Arch Cape. 2 of them are from Astoria. 1 is a short-term rental owner, and 1 is very much was not a property owner or a resident down in the community, but was very involved in a lot of the environmental activity in the area. So she was very knowledgeable about that part. So I think in general, the committee was fairly diverse and represented a number of important constituents in the community. I'd also like to point out that our committee has spent a lot of time and effort in outreach, and that's one of the things that we were originally chartered to do and by the county was to reach out to the community. And our committee, I think, has done a really good job of that, perhaps better than some of the other committees. As an example, we partnered with the local community club and we held 3 town hall meetings on this the update process, and we went through the entire document across those 3 meetings with the community. In each case, the community town hall meetings were advertised to the public, and there were also specific emails sent to 200 people, over 200 people each time for the 3 meetings. Across the 3 meetings, we had a total of 75 attendees. And so we did get quite a bit of community involvement and community feedback. In addition, I know that I personally have talked to over 100 community members over the last 30 months. And I'm sure my other committee members have likewise talked to people in their neighborhoods and their community to solicit inputs from the total community. In gathering this input from the town hall meetings, we didn't just listen to what the public had to say. We also acted on it. So there were a number of things that were brought out in the town hall that we included in our community plan update. And a couple of examples is that there were some smaller water systems in the north end of our community that felt they were being overlooked, so we included them. There was a lot of concern about preservation of trees, so we included some general guidance or requests for being more specific in terms of putting together a tree ordinance of some sort. We added in a number of concerns that came up about recognizing that our area has a great resource called the Cape Falcon Marine Reserve, and that people were very concerned about preserving the integrity of tide pools and the rocky shores, so we included that. And there were a number of other topics that came up that we have included. So we've not only listened to the community, but we have responded to the community. You know, I think no one knows our community better than perhaps the people that live here. And as I said, 3 of us at least do live here, and some of us have lived here for 20 years or more, and have a pretty good feeling on what is the sentiment in the community. As is often the case with public hearings like this, we of course get public comments from a number of different people who have a number of different interests. Some people have personal financial interests. Some people have, family interests. It varies across the spectrum. But I just want to remind us, certainly all the committee members, that I think we are doing the work of the people here in our committee. And while we may hear from a number of people that are not particularly happy with some of the things we're recommending, we should not overlook the fact that we probably aren't hearing from the vast majority of people who are in agreement with what we're doing, just because they are in agreement, and they don't need to, the ship's going the right way. They don't need to participate to get the ship to go some other direction. So having said that, I think we should go through the document. There are basically 5 sections in the document: an introduction, a landscape unit, critical hazard areas, community concerns, and development patterns. We've got some marked up, a marked up version of the draft document that we can use as a guide. And I'd recommend we just start with the introduction and go through it page by page, and that the committee members all agree on the final changes we want to make, if that's agreeable to everyone.
Charles, if I could just quickly interject here, we had some questions in the chat about what the community club was, or how people can find out more information about the community club. Could you give a quick plug to that and talk about maybe who's involved with it?
Yeah, so the Arch Cape Fountain Cove Beach Community Club has existed for, I think, over 50 years. Again, for people that live in the community, most of them are very familiar with this. And we have a website. I haven't memorized maybe Chris Anderson could give the website, or certainly put it in the chat, Chris, if you could. And I think the website's really a good website. Chris did a really good job in spinning this website up for the community club, and it has a lot about the history, about the projects that we've been involved in. It has videos of all of the recorded 3 town hall sessions that we had. So there's a lot of information up there.
Thanks, Charles. And I know Chris is on the phone, so he won't be able to post the link, but I went ahead and pasted that into the chat for everyone, so they can follow up and research the community club. One other suggestion that I had before we dive into going through the draft plan, I know on the agenda we have a final opportunity for public comments at the end of the meeting. My suggestion would be to shift that maybe into the middle of your discussion before you finish deliberating, just to give folks another opportunity before you're done with your deliberations to chime in. So I would suggest maybe shifting that to 10:45 or 11 o'clock. And then once we go through that next round of public comments, then you can complete your deliberations with having that input.
I'm concerned about running out of time, so why don't we just kind of see how we proceed? Unless we're somehow given extra time, I just feel really strongly that the committee needs to finish its work that we've been tasked to do, and that's got to take a priority for today's meeting.
Sure. So we've scheduled about 15 minutes. We could plan to keep it to 15 minutes so you don't lose any time from your agenda. your discussion. So let's think about that around 10:45, 11 o'clock, and go from there.
Okay. So if we start, let's start with the introduction, which is page 3 in the packet that was sent out to all of the committee members, as well as everybody else, I suppose. And I think there was only one recommended change on page 3, and that was at the bottom of page 3. The very last sentence where it reads, where the water district is at capacity, and then comma, a subduction, earthquake, a subduction, earthquake, comma, tsunami, and global warming was suggested as additions to the examples. So if nobody has any further comments on that, we'll move to page 4. And I didn't see any revisions to page 4. I didn't see any revisions to page 5. On page 6, I think there's a request. I think we wanted to leave some of the background historical text in the document that staff had lined out, just because we felt it was important to keep that historical context. And I think that was, those sections were the section that talked about Oregon Land Conservation and Development Commission. I don't see any harm in leaving that language in. It's, you know, if there's some really, you know, if it's not accurate anymore, that's fine. But other than that, I kind of like to leave it in. And that was it for page 6. Page 7.
So, Charles, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure I'm aware of how you all want to move through this plan and making edits. I have a Word version open, and what I've typically done is made those edits as you go along once you have reached a consensus on a particular suggestion. But it sounds like maybe you'd prefer just to run through all of the suggestions first and then go back for consensus.
Yeah, so I think the way we wanted to try to do this is to take it a section at a time, go through the entire section and have you mark it up as we're making a few changes. And then we'll have a motion and a vote to approve those at the end of each section.
Okay. I just want to make sure I don't lose track of things by making changes where I'm not sure there's consensus yet.
Well, I'm kind of hoping that the rest of the committee is going to speak up if they want to have a discussion about any of these points as we're going through them. And if you don't hear anything, I think you can take that as consensus. But we will certainly verify that at the end with a vote. So on page 7, I'm gonna kind of turn the reins over to Linda.
Linda's waving. Sorry, Linda's waving her hand. You're on mute, Linda.
I still can't hear Linda.
Okay, sorry. I think staff did a really good job of this editing. I was really happy to see that you had the courage to kind of go in there and take some of out that I didn't know what to do with. But I'm wondering this, the OLCD, this section, why did you take it out?
To me, that's language that doesn't necessarily belong in the community plan, since the community plan is part of the comprehensive plan, sort of an element of. This information would be addressed in goal 2, and I didn't think it was necessary to include. Part of what I'd like to see in the updated comprehensive plan and community plan is just something that is shorter and more concise and easier to use as a staff member, and also easier for the community to read and digest. So this particular information to me was redundant because it's covered in goal 2, and so I didn't think it was necessary to reiterate in the community plan.
Okay, well, I can go with that, or I can go with Charles if he feels strongly.
Yeah, so I absolutely understand Ian's point, and I don't necessarily disagree with it. However, it is our community plan for our community, and I have read this community plan some decades ago, and long before I knew there was a comprehensive plan for the county, and long before I knew much about land use planning in the state of Oregon. And I found these sections to be useful to me as I was reading it in terms of covering some of these things like the LCD and the fact that they exist and what they do. So as I said, personally, I like it. I'm a big fan of more information rather than less. On the other hand, as I said, I can understand for someone that's immersed in the world of land use planning, like Ian and the staff members, it probably does seem redundant. But personally, I'd like to leave it in.
Okay.
And so, Charles, just on this note of how we want to move through things, I'd feel most comfortable if the committee members make all of their suggestions, and then once there's actually a motion and a vote to approve certain changes to our draft, then I'll go ahead and make those changes rather than making them, as you're going through your suggestions that you have there, Charles. I'm just going to hold off until you all make a decision as a group to edit the document.
Yeah, I'm good with that. Is everybody else okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. So Linda, and I think we're on page 7, and you had some changes on 7.
Right. I don't think they'll be, hopefully, controversial. The first full paragraph, and I have given these to Ian in writing so that he can doesn't have to try to follow this so closely. Just wanting to put in the date of the shipwreck and where the cannons are located now.
Yeah, I'm good with that. That's good.
Okay. In this, we then, staff took out this the first green, or I think, or maybe I took it out, which is some historical, and the paragraph got rewritten. And the last part of it is now changed. Okay. While the permanent resident population grew over the years, the majority of landowners were part-time residents, using their homes on weekends and during the summer. Even so, the continuity of the same people returning on weekends and vacations meant there was less of a resort town flavor, and permanent residents mixed and formed friendships with weekenders. Many part-time residents became full-time residents when they retired. That's just language that staff took out, and I would like to put back in because it gives the flavor of the communities over the years. So that is my revision to that throughout the 19th century paragraph. And then have a new paragraph start with few homes were used as rentals. And I did tone down the language a little bit here in light of some comments I got from the community. So it should read, few homes were used as rentals until the 2000s, when the advent of internet marketing started a trend for vacation homes being turned into transient lodging. Vacation homes became investments, and many residents feel that the business of short-term rentals is turning quiet residential neighborhoods into hubs of commercial activity. And then the last sentence would stay the same. The next full paragraph has at the end, it says since 2017, and there's no purpose for that. But I would like to add there the following. The Arch Cape Domestic Water Supply District is purchasing 1,441 acres of forest land above Arch Cape, which includes the watershed for Arch Cape's drinking water, with the purchase expected to be completed in 2023. And then on pages, let's see, 8 through 9.
So Linda, if I could just
yes.
ask you to pause for a second. So there was also a change recommended for that page 7 in that second to last paragraph, which again I sent to Ian as a separate email to correct some incorrect information in that paragraph, and unfortunately I don't seem to have a copy of that right in front of me. If Ian does, maybe he could read that revised portion of the paragraph. It was like the last four or five sentences of the next to last paragraph. Do you have that handy, Ian?
Is that the recommendation that Linda had made?
No, I sent in a separate email.
Oh, okay. Yeah, let me pull that up. And that was on page 7?
Yeah, no, it wasn't in that one. It was its own standalone email.
Okay, I don't have that in front of me, Charles.
Just because it was too hard to read.
What you've sent in on the PDF.
Yeah, so let me just so Linda, I'll let you go ahead to page 8 while I find it.
All right.
I would like to respond to one thing, Linda. And that is the statement that many residents, and I don't have it in front of me, so I can't read it, feel that the short-term rentals are somehow a problem. I wonder if we can verify that many do, or how did we come to that statement? It may be putting us out on a limb for somebody to say, what are the numbers? How many? That kind of thing. And just in respect to the comments that we heard at the beginning, I share a lot of those. And I think that we are alienating a good many people by having this so specifically anti-rental is the way this comes across. And as you know, I do own property that in Arch Cape and have for since the 70s. It now is a short-term rental, but we use it regularly as a family gathering place. So
Okay.
yeah, I just feel like we've gone too far is all.
Okay, let me just say that we've heard some comments from mostly Cove Beach people just recently in connection with short-term rentals. I know short-term rental owners are very worried these days that they're somehow their businesses are in jeopardy, but there are so many people that do not rent, that do not like the rentals, or they are concerned about nuisance issues or quality of life issues or neighborhood character issues. So the community is split right now. I'm happy to change the word many to some if that is more conciliatory. I don't feel because an issue is controversial within the community, that means it cannot exist, that it has to be, we have to put our head in the sand.
Right, but we need to present both sides of the story. And I think we've been very much on the side that says we want to eliminate short-term rentals. And Charles cleared me up on that, and I didn't see the language subsequently, but that pertains to, does not pertain to Arch Cape specifically, or Cove Beach, I think. Is that right, Charles?
Yeah, well, we will get, as we keep going through it, we're going to keep circling around because this is going to come up again.
Okay.
But, you know, I mean, to the point you raise about numbers and whatnot, as I said, we've heard from a large number of community members that do have concerns about STRs. And as Linda says, this is our community plan. We're not going to stick our heads in the sand and ignore that. If somebody wants to go take a survey, great. They should go take a survey. And perhaps that could be done. But, I know in my talking with people and in the feedback I've gotten through the town hall meetings, it's quite clear that a majority of people in the community are not particularly happy with a short-term rental business in a residential neighborhood. And again, I know this is a topic that's being addressed separately, as it should be. And hopefully that will have, an eventual outcome. But I think in the community plan needs to reflect, what the sentiment in the community is. And I believe that what we currently have in the community plan does reflect what the community feels. So
I could make one
to not acknowledge that is the way things are.
If I could make one suggestion as staff, I think it would be good to keep in mind a couple of things. One, that this is a 20-year planning horizon that we have for this community plan, right? So think about how this will read 20 years from now, and that might affect the language that you want to use. And the other thing, as Gail mentioned, and has been brought up a few times today, is that there is an ongoing process with the short-term rental moratorium and amendments to the ordinances that may make some changes to the current conditions, or will make changes to the current conditions. And so I know we have a lot of material to get through today, and I don't want to get too bogged down on one particular item. I know this particular issue is very important to a lot of people, and it is contentious, and there are people with strong opinions on both sides of the issue. But again, we are looking at a 20-year planning horizon, and we're also we currently have a separate process underway looking at the short-term rental ordinance. And so I just want to put that out there, as I know we have quite a bit of material to get through today, and many other big important issues to go over as well.
The suggestion I have for when we get to the community concern policies is that we move our short-term rental policy proposals into recommendations, because the community plan policies are intended to be acted on, but recommendations are where there is some need for future study, and there may be some less than full consensus. But, you know, we have 100 short-term rentals here in a planning area that has only 450 homes. So that's, you know, that's a lot of high percentage of our homes. So we have a strong interest in the subject. And yes, we would like to wait and see how the commissioner's process goes before we have to do anything, but this is our last meeting. So we're kind of boxed in here to want to state our recommendations without really it being the exactly great time. So I'm happy to move on, and we can just leave a question mark on the paragraph that Todd has flagged.
Well, again, I'd like the changes that we're proposing to be the changes. We'll vote on it, as I said, section by section. We've been tasked to update this community plan. We've been given a rigid timeline and a rigid process to do it. So I think we should do the best that we can. And if we have to come back, or the county decides that it needs to be revised at some point later on, then that's what will be done. But you know, I feel pretty strongly that we should do our best to represent the entire community as we have heard from the entire community.
All right, well, I would just say many should say some in terms of my proposals.
Okay.
Okay, now the next.
So look, Linda, if I could interrupt. So I did find my email that I sent out earlier, Ian. So again, it's this is this paragraph that starts out, as development increased, so did the need for public facilities. In the 1940s and 50s, several small private water systems were built, with several of these private systems being consolidated and forming districts. The primary water source for the Arch Cape Domestic Water Supply District was Shark Creek. And here's the proposed changed wording. And the second water source was developed on Asbury Creek in 1999 to meet water demand during the driest months of the year. Extensive upgrades were made to the distribution system in 2010, and the water treatment plant was completely upgraded with a new membrane treatment system in 2014. So that's what was on the marked up copy I gave you, but it was just too hard to read it, the handwritten stuff. So I put it in in an email message and sent it out. So you should have that somewhere.
Okay, thanks,
sorry. Linda, I'll pass it back to you.
Okay, on the bottom of page 8, going on to page 9, staff has proposed taking out a number of paragraphs, which is fine because there's much more information than we need, but I do feel that one paragraph reflecting the history of the area and the history of the community involvement in the region is important. So you're going to, right here, starting here. Yeah, the bottom there. So the new paragraph that I'd propose is just, I will read it. The Southwest Coastal Planning Region is proud of its long and productive history of community involvement. The Arch Cape Falcon Cove Beach Community Club, a neighborhood community organization, was founded in 1966 and continues to promote activities which maintain and enhance the livability and sense of community in Arch Cape and Falcon Cove Beach. The Arch Cape Citizens Advisory Committee was formed on October 18, 1974, to provide direction, develop policies, and make recommendations to the county planning staff that would satisfy the Oregon statewide planning goals and guidelines. Eventually, citizen advisory committees were formed around the county to spearhead the development of their respective community plans. The policy statements in the original Southwest Coastal Community Plan, adopted June 1, 1979, were derived from the environmental plan of Southwest Clatsop County and the suggestions of community groups, state and federal agencies, and people in the community. So I would propose that go just above this section at the bottom of page 9, that's the new paragraph that says, with adoption of the Southwest Coastal Community Plan in 1979, etc. That would make our history shorter but complete.
All right, great.
Then on the bottom of page 9, in the paragraph that starts with the adoption of the Southwest Coastal Community Plan, I am proposing, I think I wrote this paragraph a while back, but now I think it's improved. So let's see. I'm sorry here. Land use planning. Okay, so take out everything after involvement at the beginning of the third sentence and add the following. And the CAC served as Design Review Advisory Committee for Arch Cape, reviewing development proposals and making recommendations to the Community Development Director and Planning Commission concerning the design and scenic view aspects of proposed developments. The proceedings of the committee were public, and the county kept minutes of the committee meetings as part of the public record. And honestly, I think almost all of this is in what you took out. I just cobbled together the important parts. It's not stuff I made up. And then the last thing, at the very end of that paragraph, it says Design Review Board, and that's an error. That was always a Design Review Committee. And that's it for that part. And then do you want to talk about the community involvement policies, or do you want to act on this first?
I'd like to just say I support the idea of this history being included. I don't see that it harms anything, and it does give depth and some richness to the whole document.
Yeah, no, I think this would be a good point to, have a motion to adopt the changes that we have already discussed, and the wording that has been proposed, and that Ian should have either in email from me or from Linda, and that we've already looked at on the screen. So if somebody wanted to make that motion, I think that would be great.
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second, Chris.
All in favor? Charles, aye.
Aye.
Linda, aye.
Okay, I'll say aye. I do have one concern that we should express more about general responsibility of our community to provide recreational opportunities for the greater state and people beyond, so that we're not quite so parochial in our views.
Okay, I certainly hear you, Todd. I think there's an opportunity to do that when we get back into the community community development section. I think there's a section there that talks about recreation and that kind of a thing back in that.
Okay.
Section. So maybe just keep that one in mind.
Okay, I'll vote aye.
All right, thanks. That's unanimous. So Linda, if you'll lead us through community involvement policies.
Yes. The first change I would propose is to consolidate what is currently policy 6 and policy 14. They seem to go together very nicely and make up one policy that relates to how the Citizens Advisory Committee, should there again be one anytime in the next 20 years, how they would assist the Committee for Citizen Involvement in their duties. So that's first, is consolidate policies 6 and 14. And then on page 11, policies 9 through 13. This says 8 through 13, but it should be 9 through 13. I would propose that those be moved from first, not a policy, but a recommendation. And these are taken directly from the community plan as it existed before Ordinance 1702, which was enacted in 2017 and took them out. So I think when we put these in November or October, the goal, what we said is we wanted them for recommendations, not policies, because we felt that the makeup of the governing body may change over the years, and there may become a time when citizen advisory committees were desired by the county, and we wanted to be ready with our recommendations as to how they would function. And then I have a new citizen involvement policy that I would like to propose. We have talked so many times over the past 2.5 years of the detriment to the community that we no longer have notice and an opportunity for community members to be heard regarding single-family residential construction. That is the primary construction that there is in our region. And during the years from 1979 through 2017, those were treated as type 2 procedures. They were heard by the Design Review Board locally and then went up to the Planning Commission. So again, as a recommendation, not a policy, I would like to propose that we recommend restoring those provisions from the old Arch Cape Rural Community Overlay. And that is where the language comes from in this proposed policy here.
Linda, could I just make a comment on this one? So I understand you want to make this as a recommendation. I just wanted to note for everyone who's here who might not be familiar with the process of how that would be implemented. That would require, essentially that overlay district would need to be recreated and re-implemented, which would require a extensive public process at the Board of Commissioners level. It would be a legislative change because it would affect people's property rights. So it's not something that could just happen at the drop of a hat. It would be a legislative change that would go through a public process at the Board of Commissioners level, probably after Planning Commission reviews. I just wanted everyone to be aware, again, who might not be too familiar with the land use process and how changes like this would be implemented.
Well, what's taken away can be put back. There may be a process to do it, and there may not be a will at this point, but the community wants this. It is so hard for people right now to get the information that they want to have about the development that's going on in our community, and there's no opportunity for commenting on them. And so it can't be a policy at this point, but it could be a recommendation.
Yeah, and personally, I mean, I certainly support incorporation of these additions as Linda has written them down. And I certainly understand your point, Ian, but as Linda pointed out, this is a recommendation, it's not a policy statement. And again, we were chartered to represent the community. I think we are representing the community. And as with many things in this document, there will be further scrutiny of this document by the Planning Commission and eventually scrutiny by the Board of Commissioners. So in my mind, we were tasked to represent the majority of the people in the community and what the majority of the people in the community wanted. And that's what I would like to do. And I think all of us would like to see that in the document. And, where the chips fall in terms of eventually sorting this out against the various other constraints that may exist in other ordinances or in the world of parsing this into a legal ordinance. Those are for subsequent actions by the county. But I think it's important to recognize that at least at this instant in time, this is the view of the community, just as the original document was the view in 1979 when it was adopted and approved.
Thanks, Charles. Yeah, again, I know we have a lot of folks here today listening into the meeting, and I just wanted to make sure that everyone was up to speed on what kind of process this type of a recommendation would require to implement, just to sort of reassure folks that things weren't going to change overnight as far as, requiring a type 2 process for something which is currently a type 1 permitted by right.
Yeah, no argument.
Okay, and let me just say, just to be clear, because we do have a lot of people coming in, that all that type 2 does here is it gives the neighbors notice in advance and an opportunity to comment on development projects before a permit is granted, rather than having a permit granted without any neighborhood notice or opportunity to weigh in. So it is a people's rights policy.
So I would just like to address that, as long as we're educating the public here, that under Oregon revised statutes, type 1 procedure is not considered a land use decision. Those things have clear and objective standards, and typically those permits are issued over the counter or with minimal delay. If we're going to start elevating everything to a land use decision, that's a very different scope and a very different discussion, because you are now entirely changing the process and taking things that state statute says are not land use decisions and saying, yes, they are. So that has a very large impact on the community.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Gail. I would just say we operated for almost 40 years with those being land use decisions for Arch Cape. And I think that's why we have such a lovely community here. It can be done. State law simply sets a minimum. It doesn't set a ceiling. Local governments can always give more process if they want to.
Yeah, thanks for the clarification, Gail, but and I certainly recognize that none of this is going to get turned into an ordinance tomorrow, if ever. So as I mentioned, it'll have to go through a lot of more process before it ever sees the light of day. But I think this is an accurate reflection of what our community wants. And that's what we were asked to do.
Is it the reflection of the committee or of the community?
I think it's a reflection of the community based on the inputs that we've collected from all of the outreach we've done.
I do too.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify because you said committee, so I just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Oh, sorry that I meant community. If that's what I said. So at this point, let's just have if somebody wants to make a motion to adopt the community involvement policies, then we'll be done with this section and we can move on.
So moved.
So
moved and seconded, all in favor. Any discussion for adopting the community involvement policies as we have updated them? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. Charles, aye.
Linda, aye.
All right.
Chris, aye.
Thank you, Chris. So that's unanimous. So then we can move on to the next section, which is landscape units.
Now, may I just point out that we are now an hour and a half almost into this meeting of 3 hours. That's halfway through. We've only covered one section, and I still suggest we put landscape units at the end so that if we don't get to a section, that'll be the one that we don't get to.
What do you think, Linda?
That's fine. The changes that I see here are, I won't say they're insignificant. They certainly aren't, but they would go quickly at the end, or we could just look at them on paper. That's fine.
Okay, then do you want to move to critical hazard areas?
Yes.
All right, so critical hazard areas starts on page 19. I saw no changes to page 19. I saw no changes to page 20. On page 21, at the top, there is paragraph 2, and there's a recommended change to the end of that sentence where it says, as shown on the hazards map included herein, and to add the words, or in any available updates to these maps or databases.
So I have a comment on that one. We're actually not able to adopt future maps which may come out. at a later date, or even amendments to existing maps, we have to adopt policies which are reflective of a specific map. And so if it's the, what we currently have for landslide hazards, it's the Dogami 78, 79 bulletins. We can't adopt a policy that says those bulletins as may be amended by Dogami in the future. We actually have to go back and adopt the new map itself in the policy. Unfortunately, I think it would be really convenient to do what you're saying, but we are not allowed to do that.
Okay, so then it's that. So is it my understanding that you are just going to replicate the 40-year-old map, and it's not going to get updated with current?
No. I think I've mentioned we are planning to update all of the maps that are currently in the plans with the current data that we have and the current maps that we use, just to make sure everything's consistent with what we currently have. So that would be the flood hazard maps, the landslide hazard maps, and so on.
All right, then I'll withdraw the change.
I agree. It would be really convenient to adopt maps that might come out in the future with better information just in advance, but unfortunately we can't do it.
Okay, well, as long as, yeah, good, thanks. So page 22, I think there was a change. I'll let you comment on this, Linda. Down at the bottom of the page on the coastal
I had one on, I wanted to propose one on page 21.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Policy 6. This is vacating or replatting old subdivisions in hazardous or steeply sloping areas shall be encouraged through the use of incentives such as waiving fees. And I'm proposing that we add waiving fees or property taxes and encouraging other tax incentives such as land donations in exchange for income tax deductions. Just more ideas.
Okay, and
I support that.
Yes,
on page 22, we hear under coastal armoring policies, number 3 turned out to be very poorly worded, according to a number of people in the community. So I've got a 3 and a 4 to suggest for better language. 3 would be prohibit stairs, steps, and other permanent structures on beach accesses from individual oceanfront properties. So we're not prohibiting private accesses, but just permanent structures in the access. Policy 4 would be prohibit beach access from individual oceanfront properties which have coastal armoring.
Linda, I think that one might need some further clarification too. So say someone builds a seawall or something like that. Are you saying it couldn't have steps built into it or something along those lines?
I think that's that could be possible. That is what it's saying. What I'm thinking of is my particular subdivision here in Arch Cape is called Arch Cape Park. And in the 1980s, it was the neighbors all got together and it was rip-rapped because there was a terrific amount of erosion. We were losing our bluff. And all of the individual steps and stairs and accesses from the properties were taken out, and we were funneled down the street to use the public beach access. And that, whether that is absolutely required, it certainly seems like a good idea, because you wouldn't be riprapping an area unless it was severely eroding. We don't want to add to the erosion.
All right, I would certainly agree with that.
Okay, and then on 23, we never quite got to earthquake and tsunami hazard policies. We put one in here that I'd like to propose that we, where are we here? Yeah. That we make a little broader here and have this one that's in here that says limit or prohibit development in the distant tsunami zone. Have it say, consider reducing density or prohibiting new development in areas identified as tsunami inundation zones. Consider requiring retrofitting of existing development in these areas to meet current building standards.
All right, I certainly would support that. I think that's broadening it out a bit. So I think asking for consideration is a good way to bring it up, and doesn't force anybody into a policy. Go ahead.
Yes, I would say I'd like to have it considered, but people with more expertise than me would have to make the decision. And then I think I would like to propose a new policy, policy 2 under earthquake and tsunami hazards. Work with county emergency preparedness coordinator, other county and city personnel, and community members to better educate residents, landowners, and short-term rental management companies on safety and survival procedures and needs for the Southwest Coastal Planning Area. And then on...
Is that addressing staff? Who is to do that coordinating? Is that the planning department that does that?
I think this is intended to be an aspirational policy to keep us all safe or try to help. I don't know who would do it, Todd.
Yeah, the county does have an emergency management department, and I think that they would be the appropriate department to lead that.
Yeah, I agree with what Gail said. I mean, so my interpretation would be it'd be very similar to like the tsunami hazard maps that the county already puts out. You know, the county already puts out a fair amount of information about this, and I think it would be really useful to make sure that that is perhaps rounded out just a little bit more to speak to things like you know, how to prepare for an emergency, or you know, how to contact people. I mean, I'm sure there's additional information now that we've got so much data on where these inundation zones are, and we've got so many people working on emergency management plans. I see this as a doable request.
Okay, and finally, page 23, this wildfire hazards policy. proposing a second policy, policy 2, which is missing a word, prohibit campfires, cooking fires, and open flames on undeveloped public and private lands outside the jurisdiction of the Oregon Parks Department. Almost all our undeveloped land in this planning region is forested, and this is a safety proposal. So that's it from me on critical hazards.
All right, well, I agree with those recommendations. And again, you know, if somebody wanted to make, I think that concludes the hazard section. So if somebody wanted to make a motion to accept these proposed changes, I think that would be great.
Yeah, I'll move.
All right. And
I'll second.
good. It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none.
I just want to point out, sorry, as staff, I just wanted to point out that there is, if you haven't already noticed, there's an active chat dialogue going on. I know we'll have another opportunity for public comments before the end of the meeting, but I would suggest as you're moving through your recommendations and making motions and votes, to keep tabs on the chat as best as you can, because there is some input coming in on your discussion of these items.
Okay, well, thanks for letting us know, Ian. Hearing no other discussion, I'll call for the vote. Charles, aye.
Todd, aye.
Linda, aye.
Chris, aye.
All right, thanks. That's unanimous. So we'll make those changes. So community concerns next. Is that okay with everybody?
Yes.
Yep.
I don't see where we can access the chat. I see them flashing up here very quickly, but I don't know how we would access it.
You should be able just to click on that. There's a little chat bubble icon. If you click on that or tap on that if you're on a tablet.
Where would I find that?
It would be where you're seeing the little red notifications pop up.
Oh.
If you just click on the little red number.
Yep.
Yep, there you go.
Thanks, Ian. I got it.
Yeah, so I hear what you're saying, Ian, but I really want to get through the rest of this, and then as we have time, we'll come look at the community chat.
Sure, understood. I just wanted to make sure you guys were all aware, or you all were aware that there was a active dialogue there, just in case you hadn't noticed.
Okay, thanks. So is everybody okay with moving on to community concerns?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Linda, I think you had some changes you wanted to make.
Okay, they're very minor here. I think the takeout was too much here, so I'd like to take out the sentence that starts with taken together, or put it back in, taken together. Taken together, hold on. Most of the houses. Okay, so the only part that should be eliminated is the phrase about the sewer project. That, of course, is out of date. And then a little bit further up, younger homes kind of is a funny term, and I'm not sure it's helpful. So those are just Scrivener's comments. But more importantly, I think we need to reference the housing study that was done for Clatsop County and the various cities within the county just in 2019. It's a very important document, and it's some of it is applicable to the planning region. So I would like to propose that we add a new section, a new paragraph under housing. Clatsop County and its 5 local incorporated cities recently undertook an in-depth study of the current and projected housing needs across the county, as well as recommended strategies to better align the housing supply with local needs now and into the future. The Clatsop County Housing Strategies Report was completed in January 2019. The report concludes there is sufficient supply of housing in the county to meet current and future needs, including the Southwest Coastal Planning Region. However, because much of this supply serves the second home and short-term rental market, there is an insufficient supply for year-round residents to both purchase or rent. In addition, some of the supply of future residential land suffers from a variety of constraints related to natural features, hazards, infrastructure challenges, or other issues. And then we need a paragraph on commercial. There are no commercial or institutional services in the planning area to meet the needs of residents or visitors. There is a commercial area in Arch Cape where approximately 10 properties are zoned Arch Cape Rural Community Commercial. The only businesses operated in the ACRCC zone are 1 7-unit hotel, 2 small inns, and a thrift shop. B&Bs and other home occupation businesses are allowed to operate within the ACRCR zone with a conditional use permit and an owner on site. Those are new narrative paragraphs under housing.
Okay, those sound pretty accurate to me. I mean, as you said, they're narrative and kind of describe the current situation, updating from the 40-year-old plan.
And of course, I took these paragraphs about the housing study right from the housing study.
Yeah, great. And that's, again, new information. It is a housing study that I think was commissioned by the county, so I think it's perfectly appropriate to include that.
All right, and then the last paragraph on page 25 under short-term rentals. I would propose that we delete that and instead put in a paragraph that is a little more official because it relies on the housing study. And it would read, the Clatsop County Housing Strategies Report 2019 recommends that short-term rentals be classified as commercial use when considered as part of a broad analysis of land needs and supply as required by Oregon's statewide planning goals and land use system. The report also recommends that strategies be implemented to limit short-term rental uses in residential communities. And people on the call, don't blame me, blame the housing study.
No, as you said, Linda, it's in the housing study. I think it is relevant and topical to include that in our update to the community plan because it is new data, and it is from a independent study. So thanks for that.
Yes, welcome. All right. Page 26. I think. Hold on. Okay, policy 2 at the bottom of page 26. When I wrote this, I had it as a policy, but we can so I'll just read the rewording to begin with. Create a plan to phase out short-term rentals in the coastal residential zones by eliminating license renewals and license transfers to new owners. In the Arch Cape Rural Residential Zone, create a plan to limit rentals so the total number of renters in the community at any given time does not exceed the total number of residents. Much of Arch Cape and almost all of the rental homes are located in areas at risk for one or more critical hazards, and the community does not have the resources to handle a larger population. So that being said, I mentioned earlier that it might be prudent to take these short-term rental policies and instead call them short-term rental recommendations. It would get the information into the plan without any expectation that it would be our decision in any way to act on it at this time.
Linda, I had one question about the recommendation to phase out short-term rentals in the coastal residential zone. Is there a particular reason why only that zone would be subject to this recommendation that they be phased out? That would be the Cove Beach neighborhood and then a small cluster of properties toward the north end of the planning area.
I originally wrote it otherwise. I would be happy to have them both in so that there was options in the future. Right now, short-term rentals are not on the permitted use table for the coastal residential area. That's why there is a difference. One is the development zone land, one is rural land.
Okay, so outside,
I don't know.
outside of the Southwest Coastal Planning area where we have the rural agricultural zones, for example, the RA1, RA2, RA5, short-term rentals also are not listed as permitted uses in those zones, but because of the short-term rental ordinance, essentially the way it currently functions, although there's the moratorium, any lawfully established dwelling in Clatsop County can be used as a short-term rental property, and that's just based on the short-term rental ordinance, separate from the zoning code. And Arch Cape is unique. I believe it's the only zoning designation in the county that specifically lists short-term rentals as a permitted use, but none of the other residential zones that I can think of actually list it.
Fine. That said, we are trying to implement again what we believe that the majority of people in the community want, and that's what we're attempting to do here. To the extent that this ends up being resolved by the courts, that's fine. As with anything in any one of the community plans or the comprehensive plan, if the courts come up with a different solution or a different decision, then that will take precedence. But in terms of putting together the community plan, I think this is an accurate representation.
You know, I don't want to
clarify again, because the way that I understand this is essentially short-term rentals would be phased out in Cove Beach, but would be allowed and maybe more limited, but allowed in Arch Cape. So I just wanted to understand what the rationale was from Linda, since she had written this recommendation.
Well, you know, there's a lot of differences between the development lands and the rural lands. So you know, and I don't want to get bogged down in short-term rentals because it is we'll never finish this. once we start talking about this. So
It occurs to me that there's a need for another statement here, and I put together one and see how this flies. Being a beach community, the Southwest Coastal Community bears the responsibility to recognize the need for beach recreation for the people of the state and beyond. In response to this need, this community should realize this greater public need and provide such opportunities where possible.
Yeah, I'm afraid I couldn't agree with that.
You could not agree with that?
Yes, I could not agree with that.
I'm trying to make our report somewhat more balanced.
Well, to me, it is balanced because, as Linda's already pointed out, the existing ordinances already have short-term rentals as not being a permitted use in the rural lands area. It is a permitted use in the development lands area. I mean, that's just the way it is today, and to not acknowledge that's the way it is, I think would be disingenuous. And
that isn't what I said, though. I just said that we recognize the need for a greater public to be able to use the beaches, basically, is what I'm saying. I'm not saying anything about short-term rentals in this.
Yeah,
Todd, I like your statement just fine. I don't think it would be good to put it in the short-term rental section, though, because that makes it seem like it applies to short-term rentals, and it is applying generally to the use of beaches. So
okay.
I think
That's
I would
fair.
support it, but in a different section.
That's good. That's good. Just so it's in our report somewhere.
Yeah, and I would agree with that if we move it back to the, as I said, back when we get to that.
Okay, and I think I would like to forget this recent policy that I just proposed and leave the ones like they are. Policy 2 can stay as it is because we need to move on, but I think the short-term rental policy should become recommendations. I think we'll be happier.
And I would, for the sake of consensus, I would support that. I personally, I think it ought to be a policy, but for the sake of consensus, I would agree with that. Is everybody, the other committee members, okay with that?
Yeah.
I have one question for you all. I just want to clarify what you're in. I know we're talking about policies versus recommendations, and that we do currently have recommendations in the community plan. And so could the committee take just a moment to talk about, or maybe Linda, since this was kind of your thinking with this particular policy, shifting it to a recommendation. What's the intent? Obviously policies would be items that are intended to be implemented through the zoning ordinance. What would your intent be with recommendations, quote unquote recommendations?
I am looking for the language in the plan. The plan talks about it, and it's something that has been in it from the beginning.
Right, so I just wanted to clarify. I know that language is in the plan. It talks about recommendations.
Yes, it's on page 4, and it says recommendations contained in the plan reflect some possible conflict or concern and suggest future studies or considerations. They do not carry the weight or effect of goals or policies.
Okay, so that's basically your intent, is in alignment with that language.
Well, that was my thinking.
Okay, thank you.
I'm hoping then that this will stay in as the reflection of what the community would like to communicate, you know, regardless of what ends up happening.
Okay. We're on page 26. Anything else on this section? Linda?
No, 26, just 26 and 27, nothing more on short-term rental. Public facilities on 27. I don't have anything on that, but I do on 28.
Okay.
Or 29. 29. A new policy 6. Under rural community areas, that is Arch Cape RCR, I believe. But it could be for maybe it should be under general policies. Anyway, a policy on tent camping, which we thought was prohibited in our zones, but the county is currently allowing tent camping for up to 30 days. And this is tent camping on undeveloped lots. That is the concern because of fire and lack of infrastructure. So the proposed new policy is tent camping is or shall be prohibited on all undeveloped lots in the AC, RCR, and CR zones in order to prevent fire and problems associated with lack of infrastructure. That's primarily sanitation. Camping is permitted in those zones for up to 7 days on property with an existing residential dwelling or an RV legally on the property where camping will occur and with the written consent of the property owner. Commercial camping is not allowed anywhere in these zones.
May I point out that the small lots that were originally platted in our community are often owned in conjunction with the adjoining small lot, which would be an undeveloped property. And a person wanting to have, a family reunion or something like that may wish to have some people sleeping out on their adjacent lot. Does this cover that kind of use, or does it prohibit it?
Do you want to put some language in to make that clear? I'll tell you the concern with the community, and we've heard it a lot, is that there needs to be sanitation facilities, running water, fire and emergency access roads, and if there's going to be camping, if there's going to be overnight sleeping. And since there isn't any on undeveloped lots, then there shouldn't be any camping. this permitted stuff is put in here because you and a number of other people have said, well, what about putting a tent in my backyard, you know, and whatever. And that seems fine because all of the things of concern are not of concern with a house. So I don't know. I would think that you just sleep in the yard rather than on the property next door. I don't know. I don't have a good answer for that one.
Yeah, Todd, I think if there's a residential structure where people can use the bathroom and access running water, yeah, fine. If there, you know, if it technically it's on the lot next door, but under ownership of the person that owns the residence, that, you know, that would be fine. It's where there is no availability of any kind of sanitary facility or running water or a driveway that it causes problems. So,
Right, I recognize that, but the language is such that that would not be permitted. That's all I'm concerned about. I know that the intent would be to allow it. And,
so do you want to propose a modification to this language that Linda's suggested?
Or an undeveloped lot contiguous with a or owned by the adjacent home or something like that. I don't know. I'm not even sure that it's very important because who's going to be enforcing it anyway? It's one of those things that we probably don't need to worry about.
Well, you could say an adjacent lot in contiguous ownership. That
That's
would be
good. That's
that would
good.
be
Yeah. Good.
Okay.
okay. All right, so then we've got transportation and we've got open spaces in this community concerns. Which one do you want to talk about next? Open spaces is on this same sheet of paper.
Let's do that.
Okay.
So what page are we on?
Okay, so do you have things, Charles, that you want to bring up?
No, I mean, I think.
Did I capture most of them?
I think we finished with 28, right? Page 28.
Oh, yeah, page 29, right.
And then
policies 2 and 3, yeah, right.
Right. We said we could delete those two, right?
Right.
Yes.
Okay. So we'll delete those two.
Yeah, Ian, I think we talked about that at a meeting several meetings ago. Because they aren't relevant to the county.
Page 29, policies 2 and 3 under rural community areas.
Yeah, they have to do with the special districts.
Okay.
Yeah, and quite frankly, I thought we had deleted those in a prior meeting, but if we didn't, then I think we can delete them now.
Okay. I'll make a note of that.
All right, thanks.
Okay.
Good. So that, I think, I didn't see anything on 30, but then that brings us up to transportation, and you did have some comments on transportation.
Okay, yeah. Okay, just a minute. I did. Okay, transportation.
So sorry to interrupt before we move on to that. We just went over a series of recommendations on community concerns. I might have been distracted reading the chat. Was there a motion and a vote on those proposed changes, or did you decide to skip doing that?
No, we haven't voted on it yet.
But we could, and we might as well now before we run out of time.
Okay.
I have a question then. On page, I think it's on your page 30, under natural, there will be no public facilities in this plan designation. What's the purpose of that? Does that mean precluding any parks or campgrounds or anything like that? And if you're
No.
precluding parks or any kind of public accommodation, then how do we deal with the outflow of Arch Cape Creek and the tide pools and all of the things that attract a lot of attention there?
I think those are in open spaces.
Correct.
Well, then those are in open spaces. What is this statement? Why do we have this statement in here then?
So natural lands is a comprehensive plan designation for example, in the Southwest Coastal Planning Area, the first that comes to mind would be the Oregon Islands National Wilderness out off the coast. I can't think of any other that are in the natural designation there, but no, public facilities wouldn't be referring necessarily to recreation facilities. It would be like water and sewer infrastructure, for example.
Oh, okay. No, thanks for the clarification.
Yeah, those lands are not intended to have any type of public facilities or services in terms of those types of infrastructure, right?
Okay, good. Good, I understand. Thank you.
All right, so I think it would be appropriate if somebody wanted to make a motion to accept the changes that we've made so far up to the transportation section, that this would be a good time to do that.
So it would be housing, short-term rental, and public facilities.
Yes.
It's all under community concerns if you wanted to keep it simple.
Chris moves.
All right, Chris, thank you. Somebody want a second?
Second.
I object as a community member that has not been involved in this or listened to. I object for, it doesn't matter. I object for all of the people.
Amber,
I object for all of the people.
Sorry, Amber, I'm going to have to mute you. We will have an opportunity soon for public comment, and we will allow you at that time to make your comments. Thank you.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion amongst the committee members? So hearing none, I'll call for the vote. Charles, aye.
Linda, aye.
Chris, aye.
Todd, you're on mute.
I say yes.
Okay, thanks. That's unanimous. So, Linda, you want to take us through transportation?
Yeah. Transportation starts on page 30.
And Linda, I'm sorry to interrupt again, but I did mention at the beginning of the meeting a suggestion to take public comment before you finish your deliberations. So if you wanted to entertain that at this time, we're at 10 after 11 currently, and we're scheduled to wrap up at noon. So, so just again, I would suggest taking public comment before you're done deliberating.
Okay. It's up to Charles. He's the chair.
So again, Ian, the concern, of course, is that we're not going to get finished. We've been tasked to get this done by noon today, and I would like to have the committee focus on the committee's work, and we can have public comment at the end if there's time. The public always has plenty of opportunity to comment on this when it gets to the Planning Commission, and again when it gets to the Board of Commissioners. So I'm caught between, a rock and a hard place here. I mean, if we're supposed to finish at noon, and that's a hard stop, then I say we need to press on.
Okay, and just for the record, we have scheduled in 15 minutes of time in the agenda, but as the chair of the committee, if you want to strike that from the agenda, that would be your prerogative.
No, I'll reserve it for the end. That's fine. Hopefully we'll get done and have 15 minutes for public comment.
Can the chat serve as an area for public comment, or is that not included?
To me, the chat is included in the record, so it absolutely is a place for public comment.
Ian, what do you think about that?
Well, my understanding is probably that committee members haven't been able to review that information throughout this meeting. So, you know, my position would be that it's important to get the feedback from the community during your meeting before you finish deliberating. The chat will be part of the public record. It will be preserved, so it'll be there. But, you know, again, my position as staff is that you do take public input before you complete the meeting today.
If there's time at the end, I think we're covered.
All right, I think
because it sounds like there's 15 minutes at the end, which I think you should preserve, Charles.
All right,
and we can get it done.
All right, good. We'll do it. So let's carry on, Linda, with transportation.
Okay, I'm going to try to be quick here because some of these are small changes. The first non-deleted paragraph on page 31, change to support public transportation to support a public transportation system. The next phrase about the minivan service, propose you move that to the bottom of the page where we talk about buses.
Okay.
On page 33, under policies, policy 2, it starts by saying streets in new developments. And I propose it says all new streets and roads. Policy 5 has the Citizens Advisory Committee reviewing improvements to 101. And since there is no Citizens Advisory Committee, I propose that these changes be reviewed by the Community Development Director and that notice be provided to neighborhood community organizations prior to such review.
Okay, moving on.
And then new policies, 3 of them. They have to do with privately constructed vehicular access roads. And there seems to be a lot of interest and also confusion over this. So we are going to be seeing this over and over, whether it's in conjunction with a new home or in conjunction with vacant land. So the first proposed policy is that all privately constructed vehicular access roads shall be processed as type 2 conditional uses. That's what's required in our zone already. And that's how the ones to vacant lands were processed. But now we have a question about the ones that are going to be developed the exact same road, but in connection with a development project.
Linda, I have a question on that one. Is that intended? Is that intended only for public rights of way?
For public rights of way, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Policy 2, permits for privately constructed vehicular access roads should be allowed only as part of an approved residential development project. So the impacts of access roads can be evaluated in context with the development of the properties the roads are intended to serve. Vehicular access roads intended to serve undeveloped land shall be prohibited. The third one is vehicular access roads shall be subject to the same setbacks from riparian corridors and wetlands as are other forms of development.
I
And
certainly support all those.
These are all intended to, yes, apply to public right-of-ways.
All right, sounds good to me. Sounds good to Todd.
That's what I have on transportation. And then open spaces.
Okay.
We are on page 33. In the middle of the page, there are some clarification needed because there are 2 state parks, but there are not 2 waysides because Arcadia Beach is now a state recreation site. Each of these provides parking, beach access, and limited picnic facilities, but they don't allow camping. So we need to fix the Arcadia part and delete camping. And then at the end, it's probably worth saying camping is not allowed at any of these sites. That's all just fact. Page 34. There is the paragraph about the historic sites at the bottom. And I just proposed a shortening of it so it didn't overlap with the history section. It's on the screen. I don't know if I need to read it.
Linda, I have your attachments available. Is there, I didn't see one labeled open space. Where did you have these changes saved?
It's on the same one as community concerns.
Okay, I'll go back to that one.
Because it's part of community concerns.
Okay, here we are. I've got it up on the
There
screen.
you go. There you go.
Thank you.
So just talking about the cannon and the post office, 2 historic sites. And the last paragraph on page 36, policy 9. I know Todd had a concern about this term prohibited areas, about the tide pools. So in researching how it's usually referred to in the literature of the state, it appears a better term is the planning area. It should be the county should make a formal request to the State Fish Commission to have the tide pool areas in the planning area closed to taking of all marine invertebrates and delete declared prohibited areas. And then I myself had a question on page 35 of why policy 1 is here. The county shall support the efforts of the state in the improvement of bike lanes. I would move that to transportation, where it's probably duplicative of other ones.
Sounds good to me.
Good with me. Good
Okay,
work,
and
Linda.
that is the end of community concerns. If you want to mention about transportation and open spaces.
Okay. So we're done with community concerns, correct?
Yes. But we have to make a motion.
Yeah, no, so it would, yes. So would someone like to make a motion that we accept the changes that we've been proposed for the last, the transportation and open space, historic and natural areas sections?
So moved.
Second?
Second, Chris.
Thank you. Any discussion among the community members, committee members, sorry, committee members? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote. Charles, aye.
Linda,
Todd, aye.
aye.
Okay, so that's
Chris, aye.
unanimous. All right, so then we would move on to development patterns.
Okay, two things here. Under the narrative, after the recreational housing in the middle of that first long paragraph, I'm proposing that the rest of the paragraph be deleted and that the following language be added. Most of this planning area was platted between 1900 and 1950 without regard to topography and natural resources, and without regard to the carrying capacity of the land to support human development. Thus, there are many more platted lots in private ownership than the infrastructure can support. There are many platted lots which cannot be built on because erosion over the years has taken away their support. And there are many platted lots which should be declared unbuildable due to the steepness of their slopes or their locations within protected areas such as wetlands. Most of these quote unquote problem lots remain undeveloped, but the desirability of coastal real estate, the lack of easily buildable land, and modern technology is challenging this status quo. That's just simply the narrative. And then on page 41, in the middle of the page.
Linda, could I interrupt for a second?
Sure.
So page 39, under policy 5, regarding wetlands for filling. So I would propose that we say all wetlands proposed for filling should, so strike shall and put should, be examined. And that's to kind of recognize the staff comment about the county can't require DSL or the Army Corps of Engineers to do things.
Okay. Okay.
All right.
Anything else before 41?
No.
Okay. In the middle of page 41, under policies, it talks about design review standards. And it seems like they should be included to some. So the way it was written in the Arch Cape Rural Overlay, which again was repealed in 2017, but not really because there was an objection to the zoning ordinances, but more because there was no further need for the design review committee locally. So I think we should move the design review criteria from that document into the community plan. And the the way it is stated in there, the criteria for design review shall include at a minimum, number one, relation of structure to site. The location, bulk, arrangement of structures shall be in scale and compatible with the surroundings. Two, protection of views shall be preserved through adoption of ordinances addressing a removal of trees, building height, and other relevant factors. 3, preservation of landscape. 4, utility service. 5, exterior lighting. 6, buffering and screening. 7, vehicle circulation and parking. And 8, signs. Some of those exist and some of them don't. I thought we had put a tree removal, adopt a tree removal policy in this document, and somehow I don't see it.
Yeah, I think it is there, but I don't think we dwelled on it, but
Okay.
It is in there.
Okay, good. Okay, so
one staff comment on this set of recommendations. The state laws require that local jurisdictions have quote unquote clear and objective standards for the development of housing. So it doesn't mean design review standards are illegal, but it means that design review standards must be clear and objective. In other words, language like what you have in number 1 and number 2 would not be clear and objective, and probably number 3. And so those as proposed probably would not be able to be implemented because they're not clear and objective. So I just wanted to point that out to you.
well, I think these are not fleshed out either. I mean, we already have a preservation of landscape one that survived and got moved into the code in 2017. I'm not planning something I'm not proposing something in addition to that. We also have one on the buildings have to be in proportion to the in this plan. We have one that says the buildings have to be in proportion to the area and not dominate. So I encourage, when you're drafting the implementing ordinances, that they be clear and objective, but I'm just suggesting that they address these subjects.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, they would be required to be clear and objective for us to comply with state rules. And there are probably some provisions we currently have in the code and in this community plan that are not clear and objective, and we could be challenged on those. But yes, you're correct. As we're drafting the implementing ordinances, we will have to make them clear and objective.
Yeah, but we would like you to be sure these topics are covered. That's all that this is intending to do.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
All right. So does that bring us up to page
We have to adopt these development pattern changes if you want to.
I to promote my paragraph again, and I think it probably would fit on page 39, course of future land uses. That being a beach community, the Southwest Coastal Community bears responsibility to acknowledge the need for beach recreation for the people of the state and beyond. Maybe that's all we need to say. In response to this need, communities should recognize the greater public need and provide such opportunities where possible. Now, I propose that come under the course of future lands and before growth policies.
I'm looking for this course of future lands thing. What page are we on?
I think it's 39 for you guys. It's on 38 for me, which has been, it's under development patterns.
Yeah, okay. Oh, okay, yeah, 38, page 38. Got it.
Okay.
And so Todd, that was under the course of future land uses.
Yes, well, that seems like a good place, or it could be under development patterns as well.
Do you have the ability to paste your language into the chat so we can all read it?
Yes, let's see. Let me give that a try.
Thank you.
Also, Charles, we haven't talked about landscape units yet. That got moved.
Right. Okay. So let's see if we can get a motion to adopt the changes that we've made so far to development patterns.
Including Todd's paragraph.
Including Todd's addition that he'll put into chat.
So moved.
Somebody want to second that?
I will.
Chris.
Okay, I heard Todd first. So Todd seconds. Any further discussion by the committee members? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. Charles, aye.
Todd, aye.
Chris, aye.
Linda, aye.
Okay, great. So we've adopted that. So now I think we're on to landscape units. So did you have changes you wanted to recommend here, Linda?
Yes, I did. Okay, on page 12, let's see. Charles, I thought you wanted to keep this coastal shorelands paragraph.
Yes, I did. Thank you.
Yes, and I did too. Do not delete. Okay. And so keep that paragraph and then add at the end of the first sentence and tidal wetlands. Page 14. Under the goal for this section, water bodies and coastal and stream shorelands goal, I wanted to add a second sentence between the two sentences that are there to have a second goal. Because the first one only addresses coastal and stream shorelands and protecting them from development. So the second sentence should read, to conserve, protect, and where appropriate, develop the lands near and adjacent to the water bodies in the planning area. And water bodies are defined up at the beginning of this section. Policy 3 on page 14 at the bottom. There is a request by many people that creeks be called out if we know the names of them. So since we already have Arch Cape Creek and Asbury Creek called out, I'd like to propose adding Shark Creek, Cedar Creek, and Austin Creek. And then it reads, and other creeks and drainage ways critical to local drinking water supply, etc. And then in the same paragraph, the buffers. It concerns me that we have buffers being 25 to 50 feet because that is somewhat undefined. So I would propose that it read as follows. Buffers shall generally be 50 feet wide, measured perpendicular to the normal stream bank, unless the size and natural topography would create a hardship. And then in no event shall the buffer be less than 25 feet.
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Yeah, me too.
And let me just say, so it's clear that this is a paragraph that talks about hardship variances, and we're not, by taking out the paragraph, we're not intending to eliminate variances. We already say, you know, there can be a hardship. It's just, we thought that was unnecessary language to have in some sections and not others. It's confusing because variances are available for almost anything unless it specifically says not.
Yeah, and I 100% agree with Linda. I mean, this came up earlier. I don't think it was I don't think we had any intent of taking away the opportunity for variance. It's just that that's already covered in the code, in the zoning ordinances and the zoning code, and it didn't seem to make a lot of sense to keep sprinkling it back in certain spots and not in other spots. So that was our intent.
I would say, though, if staff feels that it's creating confusion by taking it out, I wouldn't care if it stays in. It was only an effort to make the document a little less wordy.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And then this same policy 3 on page 14, the last sentence, in no event shall an impediment or alteration be permitted to a natural drainage way. I would suggest that be made a separate policy and not be tacked on the end of the policy about buffers.
And I'd concur with that.
Page 15, policy 5. I was wondering why this coastal armoring policy was here, but it's fine. And then page 16, under Coast Range foothills, highlands and uplands, the end of policy 1, I think Todd wanted to add, and potable drinking water sources, which is a good addition.
I agree.
And then a new policy 2. This just in news. Cooperate with state, the forestry sector, and environmental organizations to implement changes to Oregon's forest practices laws as set forth in the recent private forest accord. Under this agreement, the state will seek a 50-year habitat conservation plan applicable to private lands from both NOAA and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services for threatened and endangered species. The proposed changes focus primarily on regulations for salmonids and salamanders in 3 areas: buffers on fish-bearing and non-fish-bearing streams, assessments and improvements on forest roads, and regulations for harvests around unstable slopes. So more of that's informational, but it seems it would be good to have it in here. And then under wetlands on page 17, there are some policies that don't need to be on this page. Policy 9 is duplicative of policy 2 and probably could be deleted.
Agreed.
Policy 10 about the shoreland overlay GIS layer being made available to the public should be moved somewhere. Policy 14, Cove Beach Lake becoming a cultural or historic resource, doesn't belong here. It should be in the cultural and historic section. And policy 15, coordinating with state and federal agencies about energy generation facilities, doesn't really belong in wetlands.
So where that one, I can't remember if we had any, if we had a topic that talked about energy. Do you remember, Ian?
There is not a specific section on that, but I can take your recommendation and find a more appropriate spot for it. I do also want to call your attention to the time. We're at 11:43.
Yep, I got it.
I think we're done except for moving to accept the landscape unit changes section.
Yeah, did you want to move that?
So moved.
Do you want to make that motion, Linda?
I move to accept the section of the draft community plan on landscape units with the additions or corrections just discussed.
I second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any other discussion by the committee members? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. Charles votes aye.
Linda, aye.
Chris, aye.
Okay, so great. That's also unanimous. So I think that covers all of the sections in the update. So I think we have completed our task at this point. And I think we would be happy for Ian to entertain public comments in the last 15 minutes.
Just to know, I will read, I'm sure we will all read the 158 comments in the chat. We just haven't been able to do it during the meeting, but thank you.
Okay, I will go back down my list. Let me get that out, and we'll hold everyone again to the 3-minute time limit. Starting with Amber Geiger Morgan. Go ahead, Amber.
Thank you, Ian. I appreciate it. The CAC is not representative of the entire community and has not listened to the entire community. I want that to be stated on the record. Their outreach was incomplete and done by a member-only beach club that requires paid membership. They refused to read and listen to the community chat during this meeting and are only interested in their agenda. That is a symbol of how they are not listening to or representing the entire community. I object to the advisory committee and the proposals as it is a biased community. I do this for all of those in the community that were unrepresented here today and for the entire Oregon community. All items related to short-term rental STR topics should be deleted. This recommendation reflects committee members' personal agendas and is not based on fact. It is not appropriate for a visioning document. 20 years from now, this draft of the plan will be laughed at for their outright exclusion of the greater Oregon community and attempts to limit access. Thank you.
Thank you, Amber. Next, I have Colleen Kane. Colleen? Okay, not hearing anything from Colleen. We will move on. Jeff? No last name, Jeff?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Yes, Jeff Stewart. I own property and a home in Cove Beach. Well, this is my first meeting that I've been able to attend on the CAC effort, and I realize, well, I was surprised to hear that there had been 30 meetings already, first of all, and I'm saddened that I hadn't heard of this process before, and also that I hadn't had a chance maybe to weigh in as well. So there's been a lot of catching up to do in this process over the last couple of days, and I just want to at least let, and for the record, people know that today's meeting was often very hard to follow due to the format being online. I just hope people recognize that we jumped around a lot today. There were very specific things, stuff I added in, stuff got pulled out. And I do rely on staff, I guess, planning commission and county commissioners to come through this and take a very close look at what's being proposed today, as there are areas that I feel are quite broad brushed, policies that start to be more emphatic, using words like shall, prohibitions that are kind of thrown out throughout this process. And I just feel a little as if this process has been perhaps held so closely, even though it sounds like there have been community events. I'm just not sure how people found out about those unless you happen to live in the Cove directly. I am there quite often, but honestly had not heard that this process was underway, and that's partially my fault for maybe not checking in or being a little bit more vigilant. But likewise, I will say that I feel like most of my neighbors in the Cove probably are in the same boat. So just want to make that duly noted. I support some of the changes that were made today. There's others that I would concur with some of the comments throughout the day. It does seem that STRs have been targeted heavily in this plan. And with the other processes that are going on at the county that I am involved with, I hope that we can make more progress on resolving some of the STR issues through those forums so that it's more representative of the community's desires. So I appreciate very much, again, the opportunity to speak today. I see my time's run out, and thank you all for attending.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. John Meyer. John, I saw you come off mute for a second. You're on mute again.
Okay.
There we go. Oh.
Keen. There we go. I think it connected that time. I first of all want to thank everyone that's been involved in this process for the tremendous amount of time and energy and effort that's gone into it. It's just a wonderful thing to see the community coming together in this manner that we are today to review these very important policies. But I do want to say that, I'm a little bit new to this rodeo. We bought our home in Cove Beach 4 years ago. I grew up in Oregon, and we've been coming to the beach since 1945. But we're new to this. And what I will say on a personal note is that our family is stunned and disappointed at the animosity and bad neighborliness that this anti-short-term rental agenda has generated. It has just made our life and what was a dream home for us that we thought we might someday retire to has turned it into a emotional roller coaster and nightmare. Our families coming together at Christmas from Portland, from Seattle, our children, our grandchildren, and I'd like this committee to tell me what we're supposed to tell them about our home in Cove Beach. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Rob Chambers.
Thank you, Ian. First, I want to start off again by saying I really appreciate all of the work that the community members have done here. I know there are points that we may disagree on. I think they're, like emphasizing a point Charles made, there are a huge number of points I agree with you on, and you haven't heard from me, and so take that as my support on all of those items. I think that's probably true across the board, and I don't want you to think that I don't appreciate your efforts and your work. I really do. I know how hard it is to have this thankless job that you have, and you probably feel criticized and attacked a lot of the time. And if I've ever made you feel that way or others around me have, I hope that's not the case, and you shouldn't feel that way. Now, having said that, one of the things that I want to try to leave you with is a feeling that I have about inclusivity and trying to use a more growth-oriented mindset about how to approach this. In that, instead of thinking about how can we prohibit something, think about how can we allow something? How can we fine tune the rules in a way that make this more clear and acceptable and what the guidelines are, instead of how can we eliminate this? I think if that attitude is taken when dealing with any of these issues in here that are controversial, I think we can find acceptable solutions. I think we can work together. I think we can do amazing things if we try that together. And I'm here to help. I want to help. But I definitely need your help in doing so on the reciprocal side of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Cheryl Magnuson Boyle.
First set of speakers, all of them, I do appreciate the efforts put forth by the members of the CAC. I do know that people are being people, unable to avoid their own agendas and being part of committees like this. And I see the agendas that people are serving as they are serving on this committee. And therefore, it's difficult for me to be totally grateful for the tremendous effort that people have put forth. The short-term rental issue is very well explored by my neighbors. I also want to bring up some of the other more subtle issues that I find very concerning, which are impingement on private property owners' rights that are tucked in this document. Issues of easements, issues of taking control of what people do with their own land, you know, the issues of 6-inch trees being prohibited from being removed from people's properties, and nitpicky little things that have to do with, quote, beauty, end quote, and other situations that leave open the possibility where your neighbor can tell you what you can do with your own property. We ran into significant issues with our driveway in this community with members on this advisory board, and them wanting to take control of our own driveway. This made me very suspicious of some of the language that was used in this document, knowing that there are agendas here that are being served that could definitely impinge on private property owners' rights. The issue of access from private property to the beach. There's more here than what meets the eye. Be careful with what you let these members do. Just be careful. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. I think that is everyone. We do still have Commissioner Thompson with us. Commissioner Thompson, would you like to make any remarks?
Thank you. I like to sit in my rocking chair so that I can rock and think and sit a spell. This has been very helpful this morning to listen to neighbors from all over, and the considerable effort, the devotion to community well-being. There are clearly differences of opinion. It will be part of the ongoing process to listen to all voices. Your voice is extremely valuable. It's the job of your governing body, the county governing body, to listen to all voices and then to harmonize, let me say that again, to harmonize those voices into public policy that is legal, that is ethical, that is fiscally prudent, and that is good public policy that honors everyone insofar as possible. That's how I see my job as a county commissioner. So I'm honored by your work. I'm honored by the time you spent, the effort you spent, and I'll do my best to continue that work within the constraints of my role to be legal, ethical, fiscally prudent, designing sound public policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Thompson. So, Charles, I'll pass it back to you if you'd like to make any closing comments.
Yeah.
And then I think I'll make a couple comments after that, and I'm not sure Gail or Julia might want to chime in as well. But go ahead, Charles.
Yeah, thank you, Ian. I don't want to end this without recognizing the considerable amount of effort that has been expended by the county staff and specifically by Ian. Ian has been with us on this journey for all 30 or so meetings, and I can't even the scenes in terms of all the prep work to provide us with just literally thousands of pages of supplemental information that we have used and digested to come up with the conclusions that we've come up with. So there is, the people on the call today are kind of seeing the very tip of the iceberg. I'd certainly encourage everybody on the call today to go back and look at the 30 videos or recordings that already exist to get some idea of the many topics that have been discussed and discussed pretty thoroughly. So I certainly encourage you to do that. But thanks to Ian and Julia and Gail and all of the county staff for their help.
Thank you, Charles, and thank you to all of the committee members. Yes, as staff, we put in a lot of time, but we're paid for our time, and you guys are volunteers, and you've put in countless hours of research and thinking about it in the back of your mind, and preparing written comments and emailing back and forth with me. So I'm amazed at what you've been able to do as volunteers in your free time, and very appreciative of all of that. So thank you. Thank you very much. And of course, we encourage you to continue to be involved in the process as this continues through the Planning Commission and the Board of Commissioners. This is something that you've put a ton of work into, and I'm sure you want to keep tabs on things as they continue through the Board and Planning Commission. So again, thank you for all of your effort. Amazing work and much appreciated. Gail or Julia?
Well, this is Julia, and I just wanted to, I guess, extend my thanks as well. I appreciate everyone's effort. I appreciate all the folks who attended today, who were active in the chat, who had questions. And as Ian said, this process is not over, but your recommendation going forward is a very valuable tool, and I am grateful for all of your work. Thank you.
And I just want to again say thank you to everyone, and just let everyone know the board will have a work session where they'll be looking at the community plan on February 2nd. So just to keep that in mind, and that I believe is a morning workshop at 10 o'clock. So thank you again, everyone, and Ian.
Thanks, Gail. And I believe we've shared or Julia shared earlier in the chat, the link to the county meeting calendar. So that's where you can find meeting dates, times, agendas, recordings of past meetings. If you ever have any trouble finding something, whether that's an upcoming meeting or a previous one, don't hesitate to contact me by phone or by email, and I'll be happy to help you find that. So with that, I'll go ahead and adjourn this meeting. Thank you everyone again for your participation. Thank you so much to all of the members of the public who showed up today to provide your comments, and especially to everyone who hung around for the full 3 hours. Very much appreciated. So again, thank you very much, and happy holidays to everyone. Take care.
Ian, before you go, what do we do with all these binders?
That's up to you. You can return them if you don't want them, and we'll recycle for you. Or
Do you have use
to
for them?
Dust and look at later.
Do you have use for them?
I don't believe. Well, the binders themselves, we could always reuse. Those are surprisingly very expensive. So if you wanted to return the binders, we could probably use those. Otherwise, feel free to keep any of those materials for your own review. That's fine too.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thanks for bringing that up, Todd, because I was just going to chuck mine. So now I know better. So great. Appreciate that.
Ian, are you going to save the chat? Ian,
yes,
are you going to save the chat?
The chat will be saved. I believe it automatically saves. Is that correct, Gail? Before I go ahead and
yeah, it does. It does automatically save, and then we can post that to the website.
Okay,
great.
Perfect.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks again, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you, folks. Take care.
It's been good working with you guys.
Yeah, you too,
nice.
Todd.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Todd.
Enjoy the holidays. Thanks.
Yeah.
Take care.
Bye-bye.